Have you ever walked into a store, just like any other day, only to be treated like a criminal because of how you look? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a reality many still face. But before we dive in, take a moment to let us know in the comments. What time is it where you're watching from? Which country are you tuning in from? Because this isn't just happening in one place, it's happening everywhere. And today, it happened to a girl named Ayana Blake, a 16-year-old with confidence in her step and dignity in her heart. She walked into a boutique to find a dress. She left with the entire store holding its breath. So now, ask yourself, what would you do if someone tried to erase your place in the world, right in front of everyone? It was a golden afternoon when Ayana Blake stepped into the boutique on Westwood Avenue. The sunlight spilled across the glossy marble floor like a welcome mat just for her. She wore a soft pink hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Simple, effortless. Her curls were pulled back into a loose bun, and her brown eyes sparkled with excitement. This was a moment she had been looking forward to for weeks. For the first time, she was shopping for herself, alone. Not with her father's assistant. Not with security discreetly shadowing her. Today, she was just a teenager, looking for a dress for a special gala, one she felt proud to attend. What Ayana didn't know was that she was already being watched. From across the store, Karen Whitmore noticed her almost immediately. A woman in her late 50s, dressed in a designer cashmere coat and pearl earrings, Karen carried herself like she owned the boutique. She was a frequent shopper, well known by the staff for her demanding but loyal attitude. To the untrained eye, Karen might appear simply confident. But behind that smile was entitlement wrapped in subtle prejudice. And today, the sight of a young black girl browsing high-end gowns without anyone accompanying her lit a fuse Karen never tried to hide. Ayana, meanwhile, floated past the racks of silk and chiffon, pausing every so often to admire a sleeve or sparkle. Her fingers brushed over a deep emerald gown that made her eyes widen with delight. It wasn't in her size, but that didn't matter. Just touching it made her feel one step closer to the life she was building for herself. The gala was a major charity event hosted by her father, Elijah Blake, a name many in the city knew. But Ayana didn't want to rely on her father's reputation. She wanted to choose something she loved, by herself. She was unaware of Karen's eyes narrowing behind her. Karen muttered under her breath, just loud enough for a nearby customer to hear, "They really let anyone in here now." The other customer blinked, unsure how to respond, but Karen didn't stop. She followed Ayana at a distance, her heels clicking against the marble like punctuation marks to her disdain. Every time Ayana picked up a dress, Karen's lips tightened. When Ayana stepped into the fitting room with a sleek burgundy gown, Karen crossed her arms and said to no one in particular, "I doubt she's even here to buy anything." Still, Ayana remained blissfully unaware. She changed in the fitting room slowly, carefully, trying not to damage the delicate fabric. As she looked at her reflection in the mirror, a smile bloomed across her face. The dress hugged her just right. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement. She imagined herself stepping onto the red carpet beside her father, standing tall, being seen as her own person. Then she stepped out of the fitting room and straight into the gaze of Karen Whitmore. Karen stood there with a smile that wasn't a smile. "That's a beautiful dress," she said sweetly. "But are you sure you're in the right store?" Ayana blinked, surprised. "I think so," she replied, her tone polite but firm. "It's for my dad's gala." Karen chuckled without warmth. This store isn't exactly budget-friendly, sweetie. Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." The words weren't just words, they were weapons. Ayana felt them cut deep, but she didn't show it. She straightened her spine and said calmly, "I'll let my purchases speak for themselves." Karen tilted her head. "If you say so." Her voice dripped with fake sweetness, but her eyes betrayed the judgment burning underneath. Other customers were beginning to notice. Some glanced away, others looked curious. Ayana felt the air change, thicker now, more charged. She took a breath, looked around, and spotted the store manager, Melissa Grant, hovering near the cash register. Ayana called out evenly, If there's an issue, maybe it should be taken up with someone in charge. Karen's expression darkened. "Oh, don't worry, I will," she said, already striding toward Melissa. What happened next would set the entire store on edge. Karen raised her voice. "Excuse me, Melissa. I've been watching that girl." She pointed at Ayana. "And I'm pretty sure she slipped something into her bag." Melissa, a woman in her early 30s, blinked in alarm. She had only started managing this location recently and didn't recognize Ayana. "What seems to be the issue, Mrs. Whitmore?" Karen's voice sharpened. "She's acting suspicious. Obviously not here to buy anything. You need to check her bag." The store fell silent. Ayana's heart dropped. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward and said, "I haven't done anything wrong, but if it'll stop this nonsense, go ahead." She handed her bag over calmly, even as her stomach twisted. Melissa checked it carefully while the entire boutique watched. A few tense moments passed, and then Melissa looked up, clearly uncomfortable. "There's nothing here," she said quietly. Karen didn't back down. "Check again," she snapped. "She must have hidden it somewhere else." Ayana's patience frayed. She stepped closer and spoke with a voice that didn't shake. "I think we're done here. Unless you have actual proof, I suggest you stop harassing me." Karen narrowed her eyes. "If you have nothing to hide, then why are you being so defensive?" Ayana stared straight at her. "That's not defensiveness, that's self-respect." And in that moment, surrounded by silence, suspicion, and shame, everyone in the store realized something was about to change. Melissa's fingers trembled slightly as she returned Ayana's bag, her eyes darting around the boutique, searching for something, someone, to anchor her in this rising storm. But the storm was already here. Karen Whitmore stood unflinching, arms crossed, eyes sharp like daggers, as if willing the world around her to confirm her suspicions. Ayana, still steady on the outside, felt the burn of humiliation beneath her skin. It wasn't the bag check. It wasn't even the condescending tone. It was the fact that no one, not even Melissa, had stepped in to stop it before it went this far. "You see?" Karen snapped, looking around at the small but growing crowd of customers who were now watching closely. "She's already getting defensive. That's how it always goes with their kind. You call them out, and suddenly you're the villain." Her words cut through the air like a razor, sharp and ugly. Ayana's jaw clenched, but her voice remained calm, controlled. "You don't know me," she said. "You don't know anything about me," Karen scoffed. "Oh, I know enough. Girls like you—" "Enough," Ayana said, louder now. "You keep saying girls like me. What exactly does that mean?" Her voice rang out, clear and unwavering, pulling the attention of even the customers who'd pretended not to notice until now. Karen blinked, just for a moment, surprised that the girl had the nerve to challenge her publicly. But then she recovered, doubling down. "It means trouble. You come in, you loiter, you play dress-up in clothes you can't afford, and you make scenes. I'm just trying to protect this store." Melissa stepped forward, finally attempting to intervene, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should all just calm down." But the damage was already spreading. Ayana turned to Melissa, her voice now edged with a pain she didn't bother to hide. "You watched her accuse me. You watched her humiliate me in front of everyone, and you still haven't said a word to defend me." Melissa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her silence was deafening. Karen pounced on it. "See, even the staff agrees something's off." "No," came a voice from the back. One of the customers, a woman in her 40s, stepped closer. "I don't think that's what she meant." Karen turned, surprised. "Excuse me?" "I said," the woman repeated, firmer now, "that you're making a scene, not her." A murmur ran through the store. Karen's face flushed, but she ignored it. She pivoted back to Ayana. "If you don't belong here, just say so. You don't need to keep pretending." Ayana looked around at the faces now staring at her. Some sympathetic, some cautious, a few ashamed. She reached for her phone, slowly, deliberately. Karen narrowed her eyes. "Calling someone? What, your boyfriend?" she said with a smirk, her voice laced with contempt. Ayana didn't respond to the bait. She brought the phone to her ear. "Dad," she said, her voice composed, "I need you to come to the boutique. Something's happening." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "How predictable." She turned to Melissa. "If you won't ask her to leave, I will." Melissa looked conflicted, her hands fidgeting at her sides. "Maybe it's best if I leave?" Ayana finished for her. "Even though I did nothing wrong?" Melissa's eyes darted to the floor. "Just to avoid more disruption." Ayana nodded slowly, not with agreement, but with understanding. Not of Melissa's reasoning, but of her weakness. "So, you'd rather silence the one being attacked than confront the one doing the attacking." She tucked her phone into her back pocket, exhaled, and then took a slow step forward. "Fine. I'll leave, but not quietly." Just then, the front doors swung open. A gust of chilled air swept in, followed by the deep hum of an engine idling outside. Heads turned. Karen scoffed. "Oh, good. Let's see who she brought." What she hadn't expected was the towering frame of Darius Cole, dressed in a sleek black suit, earpiece glinting in the boutique lights, scanning the room like a security sweep. Behind him, the doors opened again. Silence fell, and through that silence walked Elijah Blake. He didn't speak right away. He didn't have to. His presence alone shifted the room's gravity. Standing over 6 feet tall, with dark eyes that missed nothing and a jaw set with calm authority, Elijah moved through the boutique like he owned the place, because, of course, he did. Melissa's breath hitched. Karen stepped back slightly, instinctively. Elijah's gaze locked onto Ayana first. He scanned her expression, noted the tension in her shoulders, the tight set of her jaw, and then he turned to Karen, then to Melissa, then to the rest of the boutique. "What's going on here?" he asked quietly, but with unmistakable weight. Karen straightened her back, eager to speak first. "Oh, Mr. Whoever you are, I'm glad someone with some authority showed up. That girl," she pointed at Ayana, "has been causing issues, acting suspicious. I think she was trying to steal." She tried to speak with confidence, but her voice faltered slightly at the end. Elijah didn't respond to her directly. Instead, he turned to Melissa. "Is this true?" Melissa fumbled for words. "Well, Mrs. Whitmore did raise concerns, but we checked Ayana's bag and there was nothing—" "Exactly," Karen cut in. "But that doesn't mean she wasn't planning something. People like that—" The phrase lingered, heavy, toxic. Elijah turned back to Karen, his voice still calm. "People like what?" Karen hesitated. "You know what I mean," she said, her tone shrinking for the first time. "This is a store for respectable clientele." Elijah stepped forward. "And you don't think she fits that description?" "She didn't say who she was," Karen said, defensive now. "She just walked in like she belonged," Elijah said, "which she does." Karen's breath caught. "Wait, are you saying—" Elijah nodded. "She's my daughter." The words struck like thunder. A sharp inhale echoed from someone near the fitting rooms. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes bounced between Ayana and Elijah, confusion giving way to horror. Elijah looked around once more, taking in the boutique he had built, the staff he employed, the customers who now stood stunned into silence. "Let me make one thing very clear," he said, each word measured. "No one, no matter who they are, deserves to be treated the way my daughter was treated today." And then, for the first time since she walked in, Ayana saw the power shift. Not just because her father had arrived, but because the truth had walked in with him. Karen's face flushed an angry red as the full weight of Elijah Blake's revelation settled over the boutique. The room had fallen into a stunned silence, as if time itself paused to register what had just been said. Customers stared, wide-eyed and breathless. Melissa Grant, the store manager, took an instinctive step back, clutching the edge of the counter like it could somehow steady the spinning world around her. But Elijah didn't move. He stood in place, tall and composed, with his daughter beside him, no longer needing to say a word because the truth was standing right there in a tailored suit and quiet fury. You should have said who you were, Karen stammered, voice suddenly smaller, trembling at the edges of her own entitlement. I had no idea. Elijah turned his gaze on her fully now, measured, silent, cutting through all her layers of false sophistication. She shouldn't have to, he said. No one should have to justify their presence in a space they have every right to be in, especially not to someone like you. Karen blinked, stunned, her lips parting as if to protest again, but Elijah raised a hand, not aggressively, just enough to silence her without raising his voice. You followed her. You humiliated her. You accused her of theft without a shred of evidence. You turned a boutique into a courtroom, and yourself into judge, jury, and executioner, all because of your own assumptions. A slow murmur ran through the crowd. Someone near the dressing room whispered, "She really did all that?" Another added, "I thought the girl worked here at first. She was so respectful." Karen looked around, hoping for some nod of agreement, some validation, but the air around her had shifted. The bystanders who once watched silently were no longer indifferent. They were witnesses to her undoing. "This is outrageous," she snapped suddenly, voice rising as panic crept in to replace confidence. "I was only trying to protect the store. You don't understand. These places attract all kinds of people." "Yes," Elijah said coolly, "and unfortunately, sometimes those people are you." The blow landed not in volume, but in precision. Karen recoiled like she had been slapped, her pride bruised, her ego bleeding. "You think you can talk to me like that?" she hissed. "I spend thousands of dollars here. I've been shopping here for years." Elijah tilted his head slightly. "And that gives you the right to decide who belongs?" Karen's lips curled into a desperate sneer. "You're twisting things. I never mentioned race." "You didn't have to," Ayana interjected, her voice strong and steady. "Every look, every word, every time you said 'people like me,' you made it loud and clear." Elijah nodded in agreement. Prejudice rarely announces itself with a banner. It drips, quiet and venomous, until someone bleeds. Karen's eyes flicked toward the exit, but Darius Cole, standing silently by the door, had stepped one pace closer, not threatening, but unmistakably present. Karen's breath caught in her throat. Elijah turned then to Melissa Grant, who looked as though she wanted to melt into the tile floor. "And you," he said, not unkindly, but firmly. "You stood there and said nothing. You let this happen under your watch." "I didn't know," Melissa mumbled, her voice barely audible. "I didn't recognize her. I just didn't want to cause a scene." "The scene was already happening," Elijah said. "What you didn't want was responsibility. You let her be humiliated in your store. You treated her like a suspect instead of a guest. And now that you know who she is, suddenly it's a problem?" "No," Melissa said quickly, tears threatening behind her eyes. Yes. I'm sorry. Truly." But Elijah wasn't looking for apologies. He was looking for accountability. "This boutique bears my name. That name represents dignity, fairness, respect. If you're unable to uphold that, then we'll find someone who can." Melissa's face drained of color. "Please, Mr. Blake, I understand. I'll do better, I promise." Elijah nodded, but there was no warmth in the gesture, only the cold, hard reality of consequences. Karen, still fuming, tried one last angle. "You're making a mistake," she said. "Throwing away loyal customers for a misunderstanding." Elijah turned toward her fully now. "Let me be clear. You are not a loyal customer. You are a liability to everything this brand stands for. You embarrassed yourself. You disrespected my daughter, and you did it in front of a room full of people who now know exactly who you are." Karen's hands shook. "You can't. You are banned," Elijah said calmly. "From this store and every other location I own. Don't come back." The words were final. No shouting, no swearing, just the calm delivery of justice. Karen's mouth hung open for a moment, as if waiting for someone to object, to save her, to offer her a lifeline back into the world of imagined superiority. But no one did. She looked around, at the staff who avoided her eyes, the customers who shook their heads, the guard who stepped aside just far enough to let her through. She turned to leave, heels clicking violently against the floor like an exclamation mark to her shame. As the doors swung closed behind her, the boutique remained silent. The air seemed to expand again, like a pressure valve finally released. Ayana stood still, her heart still pounding, her hands trembling at her sides. Elijah looked at her and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked gently. Ayana nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I am now." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Customers began moving again, cautiously, as if waking from a dream. Some nodded toward Ayana with quiet respect. Others whispered to each other, casting the final verdict on Karen Whitmore. Unwelcome, unmasked, unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. Melissa approached, still shaken. "Miss Blake," she said, "I can't apologize enough. I handled this badly. I judged too quickly." Ayana met her gaze with a cool steadiness. "You didn't speak up when it mattered. That's what I'll remember." Melissa nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll make it right." Elijah stepped forward again. "Then start by making sure no one else has to go through what she did. That's how you protect the store." Melissa swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." And just like that, the room began to shift. Not in decor, not in music, but in tone. Something had changed. Permanently. As the heavy silence began to dissipate, the boutique came back to life slowly, like a room regaining its breath after being held too long. The hum of conversation returned in cautious whispers, and the soft chime of hangers being shifted on racks seemed louder than usual against the subdued tension still hanging in the air. Yet amidst that tentative normalcy, everything had changed. Karen Whitmore was gone, but the echo of her presence lingered, etched into every awkward glance, every lingering stare. Ayana Blake stood quietly, her father's hand still resting on her shoulder like a shield made of calm strength. She could feel the eyes on her, not with suspicion anymore, but something else. Guilt, maybe. Sympathy. Admiration, even. But she didn't care for their approval. She hadn't come to this boutique to prove anything to them. Still, something inside her had shifted. The weight of having to defend her place in the world, again, had left a dull ache she couldn't quite shake. Elijah noticed it. He didn't say anything, but he saw it in the way her shoulders subtly tensed when another shopper walked by too slowly, in the way she kept glancing toward the door like she half expected Karen to come back and demand a round two. "Let's finish what we came here for," he said softly, guiding her back toward the dresses. "No one's going to stop you now." Ayana gave a small nod, her voice quiet but firm. "I still want to find something for the gala." Elijah smiled. "Then let's find something that makes you feel as powerful as you are." Meanwhile, across the store, Melissa Grant was making quiet phone calls, first to the regional director, then to HR, then to someone in PR. She understood what had just happened wasn't just an incident, it was a statement. And if they didn't respond to it correctly, the consequences wouldn't stop at awkward silence. It would be headlines, hashtags, screenshots. The kind of attention no luxury brand wants but absolutely deserves when it fails to protect its customers. A few shoppers had already started typing furiously on their phones, subtle as they thought they were. One younger woman mouthed, "That's her," to her friend, pointing discreetly at Ayana. Another filmed part of the earlier confrontation and was already uploading it to TikTok with captions like, "Black teen falsely accused by rich Karen. Her dad shows up and shuts it down." The views would climb before Ayana even left the building. Elijah had expected this. He didn't chase virality, but he understood the age they lived in. Truth had to be seen to be believed. And now that it had been seen, there was no going back. Back by the dressing rooms, Ayana stepped into a new gown, a navy blue piece with intricate beading along the collar and soft, flowing layers that swayed like water. She stepped out slowly, uncertain at first, then saw her father's expression change the second he saw her. "That's the one," he said. "You think so?" she asked, looking at her reflection. "I know so." His voice was steady, certain. "Not because of the dress, because of you." For the first time since she'd walked into the store, Ayana smiled fully, unburdened, genuine. It wasn't about the dress, it never had been. It was about reclaiming her space, her voice, her right to exist without suspicion. Melissa returned a few minutes later, her posture hesitant, hands folded in front of her like a student about to face a principal. "Mr. Blake," she began. "Miss Blake, I want to apologize again, formally, and let you know we'll be issuing a public statement condemning what happened here today. We're also reviewing our staff protocols to make sure no one is ever treated like that again." Elijah studied her for a long moment before answering. "Good," he said, "because this wasn't just a mistake. It was a failure of principle. One you now have the opportunity to correct, not just for us, but for anyone who walks through that door." Melissa nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "We're grateful you didn't walk away. Most people would have." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "We almost did, but some things," he said, glancing at Ayana, "are worth staying for." Elsewhere in the boutique, quiet conversations were unfolding. Two older women by the shoe section shook their heads. "I can't believe that happened here," one said. "She looked so scared," the other murmured. "That poor girl." A man at the register spoke softly to the cashier, asking, "Does that woman come in often, the one who caused the scene?" The cashier hesitated before replying, "Not anymore." It was clear the ripple effect had begun. Karen Whitmore might have thought she was making a point when she tried to exclude Ayana from the space, but in doing so, she had revealed far more about herself than she ever intended. The boutique's customers weren't just processing a dramatic moment, they were re-examining themselves, their silence, their assumptions, their comfort with complicity. Elijah watched it all quietly. He had seen this before, how prejudice often hides behind polite smiles and passive policies, how it festers in places that think themselves immune to such ugliness, but he'd also seen change. And while it was often slow and met with resistance, it began in moments like this, where someone refused to shrink, where a young black girl stood tall, not because her father was powerful, but because she knew who she was. Dignity doesn't require a last name. It demands recognition. And today, Ayana Blake had made sure the world saw hers. As they approached the register to pay, Ayana caught sight of the same woman who had first stepped in during the argument, a stranger who had chosen to speak up when silence would have been easier. Their eyes met, and the woman offered a quiet nod. Ayana returned it with a small smile. In that exchange, something passed between them. Not pity, not apology, solidarity. It was enough. As Darius Cole opened the boutique door for them, Elijah placed his hand on Ayana's back, guiding her gently forward. Outside, the city hummed as usual. Cars moved, people walked, the world continued. But Ayana walked out changed, and everyone who had witnessed what happened would remember her name, not because she was Elijah Blake's daughter, but because she had reminded them, with grace and strength, what it looks like to hold your ground in the face of ignorance and win. The story didn't end when Ayana and Elijah walked out of the boutique. It only began to unfold further, far beyond the polished marble floors and racks of silk dresses. Within hours, the video clips captured by bystanders had exploded online. On TikTok, a young fashion blogger had posted a stitched reaction titled, "She tried to ruin a black girl's day," but then her dad showed up and owned the place. The post hit 100,000 views by sunset. On Twitter, hashtags like #JusticeForAyana, #KarenCalledOut, and #Elijah Blake trended regionally. Comment sections flooded with outrage, support, personal stories, and calls for accountability. "This happened to me too," one comment read. "The difference? My dad didn't own the store." Others praised Ayana for her composure, for standing tall, for refusing to let someone like Karen Whitmore define her worth. The story hit news blogs by morning, not just in the fashion world, but in national discourse. Teen girl wrongly accused in boutique, father's calm response goes viral. The footage of Karen's unraveling, her insistence that she was protecting the store, her final ejection, became a symbol, not just of public shame, but of how easily prejudice dresses itself in faux concern. Inside the boutique chain's headquarters, the corporate team scrambled. Legal meetings were held, statements drafted, employee protocols re-reviewed. By noon, an official apology was posted on the company's main social media platforms. It acknowledged Ayana Blake by name. It condemned the behavior of both the customer and the staff's initial inaction. Most importantly, it promised training, oversight, and change. "We are deeply sorry for what happened to Miss Blake. We are taking steps to ensure this never happens again, to her or to anyone else." The post was shared, quoted, dissected. Some called it performative. Others called it a start. Elijah didn't comment publicly. He didn't need to. His presence in the footage spoke volumes, and those who knew him knew that quiet action always followed his calm words. He made calls that afternoon, not to the press, but to his leadership team, his diversity officers, his in-store directors. "This story doesn't end with an apology," he told them. "It begins with accountability." Karen Whitmore, once a proud and loud figure in upscale social circles, found herself facing a different kind of attention. Her name had surfaced. Not officially, but social media detectives had done their work. Someone had matched her face to a local charity gala photo. Another had pulled up her Yelp reviews, petty, nitpicky, and often laced with passive aggression. Her Facebook page quietly disappeared. So did her presence from most of her regular haunts, the clubs, the yoga studios, even the other boutiques. No one banned her out loud, but silence became her new echo chamber. When asked, most simply said, "We'd prefer not to comment on private clientele." But privately, they all understood. The world was watching now, and the mirror held up to Karen's actions had reflected more than just her prejudice. It had exposed the fragility of manufactured superiority. Meanwhile, Ayana returned to school the next day like she always did. Head high, steps steady. Some classmates whispered. Others approached her in the hallway with quiet words of respect. One girl in her history class passed her a folded note during a quiz that read, "Thank you for standing up. You helped more than just yourself." Ayana didn't reply, but she held on to the note for days. At home, the gala preparations continued. Her dress, still perfectly pressed and radiant, hung by her bedroom door like a silent reward not for surviving the ordeal, but for walking through it with grace. Elijah, true to form, never spoke of the event unless she brought it up. But one evening, as he passed by her room, he paused and said, "The world didn't give you your dignity. That's why it can't take it away." Ayana didn't say anything at first. Then she smiled and said, "You taught me that." When the gala finally arrived, Ayana stepped into the ballroom not just as a guest, but as someone seen. The whispers weren't of suspicion this time, they were of admiration. She caught glimpses of recognition in strangers' eyes, felt the subtle nods from people who had heard, who had watched, who had learned something. One reporter in attendance approached Elijah for a quote, but he politely declined. "Let my daughter speak for herself," he said. Ayana didn't make a speech that night. She didn't need to. She let her presence speak louder than any microphone could. Every step she took in that navy gown was a statement. I belong, not because I proved it to you, but because I always did. As the event ended and the final dance played, Ayana and Elijah stood side by side beneath the golden chandeliers. "Think they'll actually change?" she asked. Elijah looked around the room, then at her. "Some will," he said. "Some won't. But that's not why you do the right thing. You do it because it leaves a mark, even when people pretend it didn't." Ayana nodded slowly. "I'm just tired of having to explain who I am." "Then stop," Elijah said softly. "Just be who you are. Let them catch up. And in that quiet moment, with the music fading and the city lights glimmering beyond the glass walls, Ayana understood something deeper. Change didn't come in sweeping declarations or viral videos. It came in how you showed up, how you held your ground, how you forced the world to see what it tried to ignore. The next morning, as the sun filtered through her blinds, Ayana sat at her desk and began writing, not for school, not for the public, but for herself. She wrote about truth, about perception, about how silence can be violence, and how standing up is sometimes the loneliest thing you can do, and the most powerful. She didn't know if she'd share it yet, but she knew the story wasn't over, not for her, not for others like her, and certainly not for the places still clinging to the illusion that dignity comes with a price tag. Because what happened in that boutique wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning. A reminder that the fight for fairness doesn't always roar. It often begins with a whisper, a glance, a single girl who refuses to lower her eyes. And when that happens, when someone like Ayana Blake stands her ground, the world has no choice but to stop, look again, and rethink everything it thought it knew. What happened to Ayana wasn't just her story. It echoes through the lives of so many who are judged before they are known. Have you ever faced something like this, or witnessed someone else go through it? Share your experience in the comments below. We're listening. And if you believe that respect should be universal, not conditional, hit the subscribe button. Let's grow a community where dignity always wins.